today.com. Good morning, Tony Messenger.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly. How's everybody
Hi,
doing?
Tony.
Good. Now that we know a little bit more about this story, I know you wrote a column on it. There are all of these stories have different facts and figures, but you still where do you come down after we now know more of the facts of this story with these students?
I came down where I was when I talked on your show a couple of days ago, at the same place I was in my column, and that's that this was an avoidable event, and an event that was poor policing caused by some level of implicit bias, and that you can't look at this event outside of the context of other similar things that have happened. As I pointed out in my column, it was just a couple of months ago that this same police department stopped a school board candidate, Jason Wilson, who became the first ever African-American elected to the school board in Clayton. Think about that. It's 2018, and the city of Clayton elected for the first time a black man to be on their school board, and twice while he was out canvassing in that community where he lives, where his wife, by the way, is a professor at Washington University, he was stopped by police because some resident saw a black man knocking on doors and said, "What the heck's going on? He doesn't belong." And cops stopped him twice doing that. Is it a problem with the residents? Is it a problem with the police? Is it a problem with both? I don't know who's mostly at fault in those incidents, but it's a problem. Then you had about a month after that, one community over, but really just down the street in Brentwood at the Nordstrom Rack, some employees who saw some black
Get America's best warranty.
Go ahead.
walking around trying to get some, buying some clothes for prom, thought they were shoplifting, called the cops. Cops came out. Teenagers all had their receipts. They let them go. They apologized. But this is the kind of thing that young black men and women have to deal with all the time. I was just astounded by the quote from one of the parents in a story about this that one of my colleagues wrote, talking about how when they have their talk with their young black children about how respectful you have to be when police pull you over, what are the different things that you have to do to be prepared. Part of that talk that some African-American parents have is make sure you keep your receipts and you have your receipts on you, because at some point in your life you're going to be accused of stealing something that you didn't steal. That's just astounding to me, and that's unacceptable. We can't just accept, well, cops were doing their job. There was a black kid who stole something, so let's pull over all the black kids. It's a problem that we have to address more seriously than just brush it off. And every time somebody criticizes one of these incidents, say, well, they hate cops. They're anti-cop. Or, Tony, why aren't you writing about black-on-black crime? I mean, it's astounding the kind of reactions I get every time I talk about or write about one of these situations, rather than people looking internally and saying, yeah, that's a problem. I don't tell my white kid to make sure that he's got his receipts after he, my son and his friend went up to Subway yesterday after football camp, and I didn't have a talk with them to say, make sure you have your receipts so when you're walking home you don't get pulled over by the cops.
Right.
Never crossed my mind.
Well, Tony, both things can be true, right? All of those things can be true when somebody calls you and says, why don't you write about this? You do write about things, and this is, I agree with you, and I think the headline, even though I don't think you write the headlines, Eating While Black is it's sort of the stark reality of the different races and the way we live in our own community. And while that's true, I agree with you, but I also I'm not as harsh on the police as maybe some people, because the police were called. They said, hey, some kids dined and dashed. There's been a rash of that at that IHOP. Who was it? It was a bunch of black kids. The police come. They see some black kids walking to the Metrolink. They're stopped. Some have receipts. Some don't. Maybe they went too far. But I mean, to put it's an unfortunate situation. To put the weight of the world on these police officers, I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of nuance all over around in this story.
I don't believe that most police officers would agree. And I talked to a couple yesterday, and I'll be writing a follow-up. They understand their constitutional requirements. I talked to a police officer yesterday in a different department who said normally in a situation like that, they're going to bring the witness to the alleged suspects. Those suspects have constitutional rights. And one of the constitutional rights were they given enough of a description for them to actually have probable cause? Is it probable cause that they were black kids and they were wearing red? Is that enough? Not in a court of law. And this officer said there were two major problems with what happened there. Number one, normally in a situation like that, you bring the witness to the suspects, not the other way around. And number two, there wasn't enough of description. They probably didn't have enough in the way of probable cause. It fits into the implicit bias, this concept that, well, all black kids look alike, in terms of what was the actual description. Did they really fit the description? If the IHOP manager was so quickly to be able to look at these kids when they came up and said, yeah, it wasn't them, then there's something missing between what was the description and was that description enough for police to take an action against citizens who have constitutional rights against search and seizure, etc. So I think there were problems with what happened there. But the bigger problem is that what you're hearing from WashU, from the faculty, from the staff, from the administrators, from the parents, is they're like, look, are we going to get some recognition that this was a problem? Not an unfortunate incident, but a problem. Are we going to get the kids and the parents and the police together to talk about implicit bias and to figure out how do we make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again? That's the step forward for St. Louis. And I don't know that we're there yet.
Well, the Clayton police have apologized for the incident.
I'm not sure that they. When I wrote about it, they hadn't yet. I'm not sure that that's happened yet. In terms of, yeah, we made a mistake. We're sorry. As of Tuesday, that hadn't happened. If it's happened in the last 24 hours, then great.
I thought I read that the police chief of Clayton Police said he was sorry for the incident. So I don't know if that's enough of an apology, but from my understanding,
I hope that's the case. But then the next step has to be, if you're really sorry, it's a little bit like, going back to the all white ribbon cutting. If you're really sorry, what are you going to do about it to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again? How do you set up a situation so that black kids don't have to have that conversation with their parents about keeping their receipts and about how to be prepared to be in a situation like that, so that I can parent my kids and a black parent can parent their kids the same way, with this, knowing that they're going to have the same protection of constitutional rights. How do we get to that step? What's the next step for various police departments to have those serious conversations and move forward, so that we learn from this, so that it's not just an unfortunate incident?
Tony, in terms of full disclosure, your daughter is a police officer, is that correct?
Yes, my daughter's a police officer in Denver metro area.
All right, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist Tony Messenger, STLtoday.com, and with us every Tuesday and Thursday. Tony, have a good week. Thanks.